Good evening and welcome to another edition of Wrestle Talk Show. I'm your host Joshua Zimmerman, here again for another installment of wrestling's favorite insider, rumor, fact, discussion board, whatever you want to call it. We'd like to call it a wrestling video cast just in general. We don't call it a review show. Once again, thank you to our Facebook and YouTube following for this show. Without your support, we'd still do this, but it's good to know that you guys actually enjoy what we put up. First, let's get into the ratings. Well, first of all, let me apologize for a bit of a delay because I spent the better part of the day working and also researching all the stuff I wound up behind in because my personal job is requiring a little more of me, so these videos might not be as frequent, but they will be at least weekly or every other day, or we're going to try and keep between every other day and every 3 days if we can, depending on how fast the news flows. Right in the ratings, October 4th Raw scored a 3.3 with 5.6 million viewers. WWE Superstars scored a 0.65 with 658,000 viewers. Surprisingly, the replay got a 0.23 with 221,000 viewers. So, a bunch of people watched the first airing of Superstars, and then a quarter of those people watched it again. You might want to say, you could say. Impact on 10/7, 2-hour Impact scored a 1.3 with 2.2 million viewers. And Reaction, because the way they bled in the main event and the underachievement of this show for how big they hyped it, that it was going to be important because it was live and all this happy stuff. Reaction got 900,000 viewers. There was no real number that I looked on, at least through Google. Getting right into the news so we can get into our feature story, which gives me a chance to rant, especially when it's a wrestler that I think is too old for wrestling. Jeff Hardy has a October 25th court date for the drug charges that were brought against him around this time last year. I don't know if this was in the last video. Mickie James, now with TNA, caused some problems at Bound for Glory, but we'll get some details on that tonight into tomorrow, and tomorrow or Wednesday we'll have tonight's Raw and all the things we couldn't fill in. October 8th SmackDown was not in yet that I could find. John Cena loses at the Hell in a Cell pay-per-view, but he doesn't formally join Nexus until Monday Night Raw, which was free TV. Kind of makes you wonder what happened to how WWE used to do things. It used to be the feuds were settled at the pay-per-view. That was the reason to buy the pay-per-view. But still, they did, like I said, they did great because they really couldn't screw it up. And I know I mentioned that in the last video. They had to show you the aftermath of that storyline. The only dispute I have is, again, you should have resolved everything at the pay-per-view, not had John Cena lose, the fans paid for seats and people at home for the broadcast, and then the formal introduction to Cena with Nexus comes on free TV. Doesn't really add up from a money standpoint. But that's one thing WWE's never had to worry about. Moving on, October 9th, Chris Jericho began a 13-day tour with his band Fozzy. Says he is taking a hiatus, that him and Vince do have an understanding, and he will never ever wrestle for anyone except WWE because of his understanding with Vince and his love for the company. if you care, October 5th, this is in no particular order, by the way, October 5th, Scott Hall was released from rehab. Like I said, I'll get some more on all these backstories. Just, some bits to throw out at you. Next up, TNA on October 9th. TNA removes Kevin Nash from the card, therefore releasing him from the company, more or less. His last Impact taping is scheduled for tonight, as ironic as that is. And that goes into the cover story. He basically cited that they didn't meet him, negotiations didn't meet what he wanted financially, and quote, not wanting to be owned kind of made him leave TNA. But he twittered Hulk Hogan on his back surgery, gave him props, more or less said that to all the people he's tight with in TNA, stay true to TNA, more or less, and that he's leaving TNA but not leaving wrestling, and claims that outside of TNA he will do whatever he can to make his friends in the business money. Direct statement. That wasn't a summary, that was more or less direct. I'll get into my issue with that in the rant. WWE October 9th house show in Anaheim draws 3,500 people with no John Cena on the card. They're kind of bragging about that. But I could be wrong about the whole house show title, but I'm 99.9% sure it was a house show. Also announced Kane versus Undertaker in a Buried Alive match for bragging rights. Big Show named team captain for SmackDown for bragging rights. And back into TNA. TNA spends $15,000 to obtain wrestler JWoww. But Bound for Glory had no pyrotechnics. You spend $15,000 on a wrestler, but you can't afford fireworks. Okay, I get it. There's a heel turn. More TNA news. There's a heel turn planned for Jeff Hardy. They're going to use, and this, oh man, this could be good or could be bad. They're planning on using his actual drug charges as part of the heel story. Gotta say, this part and this part only, kind of interested to see how TNA does this, if they do this, because they've set us up a lot and not delivered on anything. Matt Hardy cites that he may be going to TNA and that he was trying to get fired from WWE, and more or less still is, but was trying to obtain that termination when he was suspended off of the UK tour. But I guess WWE still had the use for him. But Matt basically says that his direction is headed towards TNA and that he is trying to get out. So we can only assume. Dave Bautista wants a 3-fight deal from Strikeforce before joining. Wants his first fight to be in 2011. So we'll see where that goes. And on to the featured segment. Kevin Nash. Good old Kevin Nash. We talked about him in TNA Bound for Disaster and a couple of the following videos and previous videos. TNA gone, Kevin Nash gone from TNA, but not from wrestling. Now, this is the part that kind of makes me laugh, that does make me laugh. TNA releases you because you're not really doing anything on their card and you couldn't come to a happy medium on financials. I feel bad for you, but I don't think it's unexpected. You're too old. They don't have, it's like a 50-some year old, 40-some, 50-some, 30-some, whatever adjective you want to use, football player going in and expecting to get 25, 30 more years. It's not going to happen. They're probably not going to be scouted by a popular team. It'll probably be a 1-2 year contract. As it relates to wrestling, what can Kevin Nash do that he couldn't do in TNA. TNA basically has no structure at this point. They do what they want. They more or less know that their pay-per-views aren't being purchased, so they claim to be focused on Impact, but he didn't do anything on Impact either. He sat on that roster for years and has done nothing. And if he wasn't a moneymaker in TNA, how is he going to be out of an organization, maybe in the independents? I mean, there are ways to make money. It's not big money and, appearances. But this goes back to my thing of, if after WCW your work got crappier, how did you leave wrestling on a good note? And I gotta wonder if you do special appearances or whatever this angle is, as it progresses, we'll follow it. But nobody was paying TNA to see you in TNA. So you don't draw anymore. You don't draw like you used to. Your fan base is gone. What can you possibly do? I know your name's Kevin Nash. I get it. I understand that you think the legacy hasn't died yet. But what can you possibly do for any of these guys? And that's not speaking, everybody's got their go-to guy. That's strictly speaking on his wrestling and the way he's carried himself over the last couple of years. If he's not who he was 10, 12 years ago, and no one is, but most people outside of Ric Flair, Mick Foley, and Kevin Nash understand that eventually you reach an age that it's better to retire and actually retire. Like I said, it all comes back to square one, where no matter what he does now, will he be able to reinvent himself? Will he be able to help other wrestlers, maybe with training and getting over and gimmicks and storylines and stuff? I can see him as an attribute. If they put him, maybe as a creative consultant, but they've actually got to consult these people that actually wrestled. Vince Russo running the storylines makes no sense. It should be and this is no bias against TNA in general. I firmly think a wrestler should be the one, or former wrestlers, or wrestlers that have injuries that prevent them from wrestling, but they still obviously have creative minds. It should be wrestlers writing these storylines, not someone who all he did was write, and his peak was the Monday Night War that, again, they keep trying to recreate. They keep thinking that the next thing they pull out is going to put them in competition with WWE, and WWE couldn't be less worried about them. So, where do you go from here, Kevin Nash? Do you become a phone a friend to your next friend that gets over in TNA? Do you consult with the independents? What happens to you? Again, just to, wrap it up. If he didn't do it in TNA, he's not going to be able to do it anywhere else, because TNA is the most laxed organization I've seen. And my personal opinion, I really don't see him going anywhere. Bound for Glory reviews coming up. Monday Night Raw tonight. We will have the Friday Night SmackDown from October 8th review tomorrow or Wednesday, like we said. Raw starts tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern. Feel free to follow us on WrestleTalkShow.webs.com or YouTube.com/CWE Company. All show-related emails or wrestling-related emails that can be filtered, worked into the show, can be sent to cwecompany@gmail.com. And again, I want to personally apologize for the delay, but we will update our information and have another video up by Wednesday night, and we'll basically shed some light on all of the news stories that didn't get covered. Until next time, this is Joshua Zimmerman saying thank you and good night.